All right, so the results are in for the inaugural Jeremy versus Rob Whiskey Draft, and Team Rob won by an absolute landslide. We had 206 total votes. Thank you so much, everyone, for voting in the comments section down below.
Despite the amount of fake accounts I made to vote for you.
Vote for me.
To vote for you.
For pity votes.
So I didn't have to get rid of like my spring my gate.
So Rob took 125 of the 205 votes, so
That's not that bad.
75%. 75 point whatever percent.
All right, whatever.
Yeah, it's
Not as bad as it sounds.
yeah.
125 out of 200. That means I only really got whatever. It's 50 more, but
It's a lot.
it's a lot.
Yeah. But a lot of people were citing that,
Minus the 30 that I made. I voted for you.
a lot of people commented saying that, the Springbank 8-year-old
Tip the scales.
really did it for them.
So
But we hyped that bottle like really hard as soon as you picked it.
And the other thing we had talked about off camera, which I really want to initiate for next year, is pick your favorite team.
Right.
And then if you're the winner of the samples, you get to choose 4 of any whiskeys that you see in that whiskey
like
draft.
make your own little draft of whiskeys for the winner.
Yes,
Right.
because it will deter people from picking just because they want to try the whiskeys on one.
Sure,
opposed to
that
the
was
other.
another thing too. Is like, I've tried, the majority of the ones that you selected, so I'd rather
Right.
go with Rob's and win those. Yeah, I get that.
Right? Because it'll deter people from picking what they haven't tried versus what they think is actually better. Right? So.
Yeah, but a really cool thing. I think it was for you. I think that both.
Credit where credit is due. That was your idea. That was a great idea.
Yeah, and a lot of people really liked it. They thought it was kind of a cool concept, and a lot of people were like, it was very close. Like there would be no loser, no losing team. But yeah.
I mean, we don't choose bad whiskeys.
No, of course not. We don't buy bad whiskeys.
We don't buy bad whiskeys.
Really?
That's
I
what
mean,
meant to
sometimes
say.
we do, but not all the time.
I mean, we don't mean to. Anyway.
So without further ado, we got the name of wheels, and I've got all the names of the people who selected your team, and one lucky winner is going to win a sample from every single whiskey that you selected on your fantasy team. Let's spin it up and see who we got. Here we go.
Which brings me to my next point, which is I got to get whatever bottles.
Rostislav Traps. Congratulations, you are the winner. Email sippersocialclub@gmail.com. I'll put the email in the description. Email me and we'll get all the samples poured and off to you. Congratulations.
I feel I recognize this name.
Okay, awesome.
We've talked to Rostislavs before.
Always good to give it to an active participant in the comment section. So there you go.
Hey, welcome to Super Social Club. I'm Jeremy.
This is Whisky in the Six. I'm Rob.
Welcome to the Whisky Rant Podcast.
It's a little crusty,
It's frustrating.
and it's going to be a little bit of a rant.
I don't understand it. I don't know why.
Some sort of injustice.
Anyway, end rant.
Hello and welcome back to the Whisky Rant Podcast. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Rob.
And tonight we have a special guest, James Bornn. We've mentioned him before. The man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah.
The person that was responsible for us going to BC and trying the epic Glenlivet 80-year-old.
The godfather of possibly the best tasting ever put together.
Forever.
You never disclose how much you paid me for that?
What do you mean? It was completely
No. There was no money involved. No, that was fun.
James, what's your official title? What's on your business card? Tell the folks what you do.
Yeah, so believe it or not, I am a brand ambassador for Massi Agricola. I've got an Italian tie to Rob. So kind of the genesis of my job was being an ambassador of Western Canada for Massi, so selling great red wines. But kind of lurking behind that was these great whiskey brands that we imported into Canada. So, back in the day when I got started, we were doing things like White Mackay, and then we picked up the Ben Riach company. So we were working with Glendronach and Ben Riach, and Then, White Macallan ended up going to a national agency. And of course, we all know what happened with Ben Riach. And we kind of, my job didn't really have much to do with whiskey anymore. And it was very wine centric. But then, lo and behold, we started gathering some awesome whiskeys based off the work we had done with Ben Riach. So we picked up Michter's was kind of the big first one. And then of course, Billy picked up Glenallachie and they came on board, Wolfburn, Gordon and Macphail, and of course, Compass Box. So just an awesome portfolio. And I'm sure there's some exciting ones still coming down the pipe. So it's been a lot of fun. And truthfully, that's kind of, commandeered a lot of what I do because all these whiskeys have just exploded in popularity and people are kind of realizing, that there's great whiskeys from some of these small family run operations, which it was just good timing, right place at the right time.
Yeah, you guys have managed to nail down a bunch of companies that are either up and coming or like literally right before they blew up. And I know Glenallachie has done that for you guys, or they have done that in general. They've blown up and they're no longer an up and comer. They're like, get in line because you're probably going to miss this allocation if you're not already in line. Mm-hmm. Benaromic's right there. I feel like they're knocking on the door of exploding, taking.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think there's some similarities with all those companies. Like even I would put Wolfburn, Compass Box, Michter's, like they're all family-owned companies. They're all very like quality conscious. They're a little bit less on the marketing side. I think they're all trying to appeal more to the whiskey enthusiasts. And I think the bigger thing for me is, whiskey to me is not a short-term play. I'm curious about working and selling whiskeys where the people that are making them are like literally thinking 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And I think that's a difference between, a small independent producer sometimes and sometimes larger companies. They struggle obviously to operate under that premise. So, we're in a boom time for whiskey. It might not always be that way. My whole career might not be spent, in just a growth period, but I want to be connected to brands that I know are making good whiskey and that I'm like proud to sell. Like, I don't think I'd be good at selling whiskey that I didn't want to have on my own shelf.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we talked about brand ambassadors before and like having to sell something that they don't really even drink themselves.
Right.
And obviously when whiskey is good quality and a good value, it kind of sells itself and it makes your job so much that easier.
Yeah.
You gave us a couple samples tonight. Let's talk about the first one that we're drinking, the Benaromich.
I tagged a few things that are on their way here. I admit I'm as curious as everyone else when these new releases come out, and it's tough because there's this big delay, right? Like even today, for instance, Glenallachie announced like the new 16-year-old cask strength that's part of a new series honoring Billy's 50 years in the business. I'm getting texts all day saying like, "Hey, can I get a case of that?" And it's like, yeah, in like probably January. Like it's just the reality of how it works. But fortunately there is some legal means to get stuff from the UK. So what I grabbed here is a few releases that released earlier in the year in the UK. And the first one is a new release from Benaromich. Now I know, Rob, that we tried the last time the Peat Smoke Sherry edition from Benaromich. So Benaromich does these like special releases under this contrast range. And this is one that to me is kind of different than anything I've seen out there before. It's called the Cara Gold Malt. So for the beer drinkers out there, like they're going to know what this is right away. Cara Gold is essentially like a lightly roasted malt. So normally when the malt is dried, like, you would dry it out and basically use it to make mash almost immediately. In this case, there's been an extra step of roasting, but not heavy. So I know there's things like Glenmoe Signet and stuff that have those types of experimental elements to it. But this is more just focusing on that one Cara Gold. It's not 100% of the barley, but you'll see right away like what it adds. And this is fully ex-bourbon matured.
Yeah, it adds a fruity element that I notice. And this guy, like, there's got to be like, we have the LCBO ticker.
Right.
We're gonna have to put up a ticker that's like every time Rob mentions Shelter Point or Two Brewers, because it has this like Two Brewers kind of like element to it, which I love.
It does.
Know that. Yeah, it's that roasted malt. And I don't know why more companies are not doing that, because it makes delicious whiskey. What's the ABV of this?
It's 46%, non-colored, non-chill filtered, but I think what's tricky is like if this was distilled in 2010. I mean, the whiskey world in 2010 to have the foresight for this, things have changed. You always wonder like what kind of crazy experiments are happening right now in this boom time when there's so much room for innovation, and a lot of them, might hit the market when it's like too late. Do you know what I mean? So I'm sure there's lots of this type of experimentation happening out there.
Mhm.
But it's a good question. I think distillers in general, and if you guys have ever seen interviews with Keith, the distillery manager, he's kind of a lighthearted, got a sense of humor. He strikes me as creative. I can imagine him like looking at the stills and kind of thinking up all sorts of harebrained ideas all the time. So I'm glad this one made it through because it's kind of different, right? Like it tastes very different to me than like it's got elements of the normal Benromic and you get the peat.
Yep.
And like there's a little bit of an earthy side to it, which to me is a Benromic signature. But then there's like this bright, like almost tropical fruit that just like really like zings through the middle of the whiskey nicely.
Yeah, I get a really nice like sweet honey roasted malty characteristic
Yes.
to it. And yeah, you're right. That little bit of fruit comes through tropical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very like warm day type of whiskey to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you describe this as like more of like a summer pour.
This would work. Like, so sometimes Scotch gets the reputation that like you take it outside, you have a cigar with it now, and you almost like mute the whole experience. Whereas I feel like this would stand up to a cigar. It would stand up to the outside climate and that sort of thing. Like, cause it's got this like robust kind of feel to it.
Yeah, it's very like present on the palate.
Well,
Yeah.
what would you guys reach for? I'm curious. Like, so let's say there's that hot day, you've got the late sunset, you're outside, just getting absolutely tortured by mosquitoes. Like what's in your glass?
The other night I had
Reach for it. If it means bourbon.
so I actually had a four square the other night, and the new 2009, the rum,
Mhm.
and it stood up beautifully outside. Like it was phenomenal outside. The other one was, what else did I have that really worked well? It was a Cavallon that was a rum cask,
Yeah.
and like we kind of did that on purpose. But I think you have to go cask strength, like for the most part,
Yes.
cask.
Yeah, I cracked a Michter's 10 that I had from 2017 recently. Drank that on a hot day outside, loved it. So yeah,
Put
I
ice
think
on it? On like a warm night, do you put ice on it?
never.
You know what's funny is that, okay, before I went to Kentucky, I never would have put ice on bourbon. And then walking around the city there and realizing like that's what everyone drinks bourbon is on ice, even the best of the best.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not like Michter's 20 level, but I think there's like something about the warm weather and like a strong like cask strength bourbon on ice. Like it kind of seems more like, okay, this was meant to be a little bit,
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll try it sometime, but I don't think so. I mean, for me, like I was just in Colombia. It was 35 degrees and sunny every day. I drink rum nonstop,
Oh, yeah,
and
rum
that
is-
translates to a hot climate pour for me. So
Yep.
I would reach for that, maybe more than like a cask strength Scotch, but
Yeah, honestly, like my only drawback to drinking on ice is I'm all like, I feel like there's so many factors in getting to know a whiskey
Mhm.
that I don't want to add any new ones. Like it already takes me to understand like what this whiskey is trying to tell me. You know what I mean? If I have it on this day after eating this, it's gonna drink different than if I have it on, a Wednesday when I had pasta with sugo or whatever. Like
Yeah.
You're right. You're overthinking it. Yeah. So here's one more big one for you though. Would you take a bottle of this Kerrygold and put it in your fridge and just leave it in the fridge for summer?
Man, all I know is I'm buying 2 bottles of this when it comes out because I love it. Honestly, I've never done that. I've never.
I've always pictured, Rob, that if you open Rob's fridge, that like 2 bottles of Springbank local barley like clink against each other in the door.
Oh
I
my
was
God.
like, "Oh."
I would immediately just rescue them and save them.
Tells his kids like when you pull the milk out, don't spill the Springbank local barley.
No, but like
we are no longer rant buddies. I'm out of here.
I think if you wanted to get like adventurous in a cocktail, like a highball or something like with this in it, I think would be really refreshing on a summer day.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do like a Scotch forward cocktail. But for me, like, I don't know, like when I'm drinking something neat, I would never put ice, even like when I've been at an all-inclusive resort where like the only Scotch they have is Red Label. and I got it served on the rocks, and I hated it, and just pulled the rocks out and drank it just neat, because like for me, even a shit whiskey like that was still better neat than on the rocks.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's the one difference is if I don't like a whiskey, I don't mind adding some ice, letting it water down a little bit because it might iron it out a little.
Yeah.
Like that is because essentially the way I view it is the cold numbs like some of the flavors, it numbs some of the aromas.
Yeah.
So like I do want that restricted when I'm drinking something that I don't enjoy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair. Actually, that's a really good point. Another thing I noticed about this is it occurred to me that, and maybe it's because of the portfolio I work with, but it seems like the vast majority of special releases and innovations, especially in the Scotch, they always veer towards like the darker end of the spectrum. And it's like, how much innovation you get where it's like, yeah, we made something that's got brighter fruit and fresher flavors. Like the Springbank local barley to me would fall in that category too.
Yeah.
But there's not like that's the minority for sure. So it's kind of cool to see something new in that space.
Yeah, I don't know if I had COVID about 2 months ago, and I don't know what it is about sherried whiskey, but it burns my palate way faster when I'm drinking a cask strength sherried whiskey than when I'm drinking like a bourbon aged with a Scotch or something like that. Like, it's weird. I don't know what's
Maybe it's a sulfur.
Maybe
it could be the sulfur. Who knows?
It could be that. I don't know. It just seems like I've been leaning heavily towards bourbon aged whiskeys these days. So,
Man, that would suck if now you're like more susceptible to sulfur.
I was already
Scotch.
pretty bad. I was already getting pretty bad. I find that things that I've expected to really enjoy, unless it's peated, and like I don't know, I just haven't been. I haven't been enjoying them. This is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I really like this. This is exactly what my palate is asking for right now.
Right.
And it kind of, I don't know if this is an insult or a compliment. I think it's a compliment because I love Springbank, but Benromic for me is the closest thing to a Campbelltown whiskey outside of Campbelltown.
Huh. That's a good point. I've never heard anyone say that before.
Yeah, well, I got to be honest, as an agent, I think part of the reason that Benromic has started to grow again is that that it's so hard to get Springbank now. And it's kind of just such a mess that I think we're picking up customers that are, maybe used to be Springbank 10 or 15 or even like long row NAS customers. And like we have something that at least is more readily available and is priced lower. And I mean, obviously quality, I'm not going to argue that we're at the same quality. I don't know. I think some of it is, but at least it's like in the ballpark, right?
Yeah. I mean, not everything Springbank does is a home run, right? Like we've had.
Whoa, Rob.
Unsubscribe.
Right. I love Springbank. Everybody knows that, but I've had some duds. Like it happens. You know what I mean? So, I mean, everybody's allowed.
Yeah, I mean, when they blend differently every single year for their core range, you're not obviously going to like it, right?
Yeah, and we literally blind buy every single Springbank we can.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get like that Springbank 18 that's sitting on my shelf is quite a bit more full than some of the other bottles sitting on my shelf, right?
I know. I wish that was a bit more common, by the way. I remember working for Glendronach, like the 18 and the 21 were notorious for this. Sometimes you'd see 6 or 7 batches a year come to the market. Sometimes they were like vastly different from each other. And yeah, I mean, chasing batches would be difficult, but there were definitely some that were better than others.
There was a time where you could do that. Now you can't. Like
it'd be impossible.
Yeah, 7 years ago you could chase whatever batch you want, and it was probably still sitting on a shelf. Now you're lucky if you get what just came out, whether it's good or not. That's it. Like there's no, like you're not gonna get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that really reminded me of two things. It reminded me of what's happening with Two Brewers and that roasted malt and that fruitiness, but it also really reminded me of a Campbelltown whiskey.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
It was nice. Well, this is the Whisky Rant Podcast. You have an insight, James, into the industry much more than we would. What's top on your list of something that is rantable, a pet peeve, something like that you're experiencing right now?
Yeah, I know. It's Yeah, I kind of have a little bit of a window behind like how the gears behind the clock work a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, fortunately, in my position, I don't often have to deal with the worst of it. I mean, the biggest problems that I deal with these days are dealing with like shipping, and I mean, that's just a gong show all over the map these days. But I see things happening around me that I wish didn't exist in the market. Particular like probably the biggest one is just how allocations happen in Canada. And, I really, look, I'm not going to come out and claim that, our agency does all the allocations perfectly. And like almost everything we release from our producers is like in demand and on allocation. Yeah. And we, I think, really do a good job of thinking through like, where does this go? There are some elements of like, our company is still a business, we need to make money, but we also want to protect our business long term. We're not cashing out, and just making sure it gets to the right place and to the fair place. I always say like there is a lot of shady stuff that happens with this desirable whiskey. Like it puts a lot of agencies in a tough spot because, let's say that I'm trying to sell whiskey A that I can't sell because it's not in demand, but whiskey B is in demand. The temptation to tie the two together is just, it's so great. Mm-hmm. And I wish there was more creative ways to get around that, or that there was a bit more of a structure to how those decisions were made. So, I really try to be objective, and, fortunately I have data at my fingertips, and I often wonder if how many people are looking at that, and I actually look at like, okay, well, how much Glenallachie sells in BC, how much at each of these stores and restaurants in Alberta. And I kind of like try to work backwards from that to give everyone a shot at stuff. And, we really try to, obviously a lot of the stores and stuff in BC and Alberta, like those guys are my friends at the end of the day, even though they have to like beg me for whiskey sometimes. And, sometimes I have to beg them for other things. But I try to not make decisions based on who's my friend. I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of decisions that get made on whiskey allocations based on who's my friend.
Yeah, you have to, right? Like, how do you separate it afterward? Well,
I think I'm lucky too. Like, first of all, I've got mostly desirable whiskeys, and B, like, I'm still like in my mind kind of early in doing this in my career. Like, I really don't want to burn bridges because I've seen what that does. So
we were talking off camera, and we were talking about LCBO allocation because we had spoken about roughly what we were going to talk about anyway for the rant. And LCBO allocation is an absolute joke. But we used to feel that way about BC as well. And I do wonder how much of an influence you and your company has had on that, because I do see Glenallachie 10 popping up in BC shelving, or like on BC shelves. I do see some of the stuff that you guys are representing popping up on shelves, which has got to make the BC like whiskey fan stoked, right? Because you guys are doing a great job of representing your brand and making sure that your province is getting it, as well as the rest of Canada as well. Because if you bring it into Alberta, you bring it into Canada, right? So I honestly, I don't know how much you're allowed to take credit for that, but I feel like since you're the face that we recognize with that brand, or the brands that are being represented, we give that credit to you, because I think you're doing a really good job on that.
Well, thank you. I think, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think a lot of our brands are a small blip, but I do think that there are ripples from some of the decisions we make for sure. So this would probably lead me into this might be actually my biggest pet peeve is pricing. And I know like the obvious thing from an outsider, like, and from your guys' seat, you probably look at pricing sometimes and think like, okay, this person's gouging, this person is like a deal. But often the behind the scenes stuff about pricing is actually a much more complicated story. And, the price that gets quoted from the supplier on day one, that then goes through like a costing analyst, goes through the sales team, goes through the marketing team, then gets pitched to a buyer who calculates, like there's so many places where things can go wrong. And I think sometimes like people just like get caught up in the gears of, and a price just shoots out the other end. And no one has stopped to think like, okay, like, does this make any sense? Like, what's the price in BC versus Alberta versus Ontario? And I think that's one thing, like we've worked really well with our suppliers to say like, look, like we've got an awesome whiskey market here, but here's the reality of the situation. Like we pay insane amounts of tax. Like I think in Ontario, I can't remember what the number is. I know in BC, I think it's like 129% by the time you walk out of the store. I'm sure in Ontario, it's like add 2 zeros to that. Yeah. And it's insane, right?
Sure. Well, I figured out what the cost of the new Bowmore 21 Aston Martin was, like what retail stores were paying to get that in shop. And I think, like, I don't quote me, because at the time it was relevant. Now I can't remember exactly, but I think it was somewhere around the lines of like $123. Don't quote me again. But the reason why I knew that is because there was a province that was selling it for about $250.
Yeah, so that's a good example to me of like that person probably just got the price as it was quoted from the source.
Right, 30%
system.
Yeah, sorry, I'm wrong about the 123. It was exactly 30% more. So it was 250 retail. So whatever 30%, it was like 180, 170, whatever it was. But yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, whiskey should be more expensive in BC than it is in Alberta. Like, there's no way around that.
Yeah.
But the question is, like, you have to get everyone involved and realize that, like, okay, can we bring that closer together? And then also, the suppliers need to understand that this is what your competitors are priced in the UK. This is what they're priced in the US. Like, has someone looked at like comparing that to Canada? And I think usually what you're seeing is probably more instances of people not doing their diligence on that side versus people just saying like, I can take an extra $30 a bottle on this release. Like, it's probably actually more of the former.
Yeah. And that's essentially what every other province did with this bottle, because the LCBO sold it for $500. I'm pretty sure everywhere in Alberta was at least $500.
Okay.
Or close to, anyway.
Yeah.
Like, let's say between $400 and $500. So everybody's making almost 100% profit on this bottle.
Yeah.
Right? This one in particular.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Sometimes the suppliers like really step up. Like Ben Romick to me is a good example. Like Ben Romick 10 and 15 and 21 are the same price in all provinces.
That's awesome.
Like, who does that?
Nobody.
Like, that to me is like someone who's been around for 100 years, 4 generations, and is like thinking 100 years in the future and thinking like, we want to be around.
So essentially what you're saying is like, I'll go to a province that has more tax and I'll work with you on a better price so that the bottom end, like the bottom line, is less to the consumer or more even throughout provinces.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of different sliders to move around to approach that. You just have to figure out what works. At the end of the day, like if you look at the price on the shelf and think like this doesn't make sense, then it's not good business, right? And that's the thing. There's too much bad business in the whiskey game because it's easy, right? Easy sales are never good, right? If you just like give your whiskey away and people take your money, like that's not sustainable.
No, right? It's true. Yeah. Okay, so we are drinking this McNair's 10-year-old, which is a product of Glenallachie.
Yeah, I should mention, by the way, this guy will probably be like close to $100.
That's a great price. And how old is it? It says 20. 12. There's 12 on the dot?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's a great buy. Yeah. For $100, 12 years old. It drinks older, in my opinion. And yeah, I really, really like that bottle. I'm definitely going to buy that bottle. So.
Okay, so we're going to do the McNair's now.
Yeah, I thought it was a 360 on this thing when I first tried it.
Yeah,
this is a very different whiskey philosophically than the last one.
So you got sherry Glenallachie in here. Mm-hmm. Maybe some new. I didn't do my due diligence and find out ahead of time because I knew we were having you, and I'd rather like.
Well, I was going to say let's start at square one and kind of like let people know even what this is. So yes, this is part of the Glenallachie stable. So when Billy Walker and his team, right, Trish Savage, Graham Stevenson, when they bought Glenallachie, part of the purchase included 2 blended Scotch brands, like heritage brands. So McNair's was one, and then White Heather, which you can see on the shelf behind me. So the White Heather is like blended Scotch. McNair's is blended malt. Okay. I don't know if McNair's was blended malt before, but they repurposed it as blended malt. And what came along with that was some of the supply contracts. So that's kind of like cool part of the business that I didn't really understand is that, some of these supply contracts are like long-term. So, they're getting malt whiskey from other suppliers that just comes to them as part of these contracts for these blends. So yeah, when you read the back, McNair's kind of says essentially that it's a blend of malt whiskey from Speyside and Islay, and then it's blended with sherry Glenallachie single malt. Now, if you know Billy's history a little bit, like he got his start at Bounties, right? So you can do that connection, right? Like the distilleries he's bought have been from Chivas Brothers. Mm-hmm. So that clearly there's some connections there. I sincerely hope that one day we get the story of how he convinced them to sell Glenallachie to him. Like, have you guys heard the official story? Because I certainly haven't, and it's got to be good, right?
I haven't. I know that Billy Walker's done a couple interviews, but I don't think they ever really got to that. Like, how did you acquire this?
Yeah. Did you guys ever read Richard Patterson's book?
No.
Goodness Knows.
No.
Okay, you got to search it out. He talks a lot about like the old school Scotch business and how like so much business was done like over lunch, over a few drams. Sometimes people got a little tipsy and then made a handshake, and like even like a dusty old pub somewhere in Scotland. And I like to picture that that's where Billy made his deals. Yeah. But I have no idea. But I'm going to find out one day.
I guess.
Yeah. So clearly, like he wants to be known as not just sherry guy. I mean, he does have these other abilities, and I think he wanted the opportunity to show it a little bit more. And I don't think he really got that opportunity at his last stop. Mm-hmm. So yeah, now he can kind of get into that a little bit more.
Well, I feel like you give Billy Walker the opportunity to blend a whiskey. Like if you gave him just access to whatever the hell he wanted,
yeah,
he'd make the best whiskey of all time.
Sure.
You give him access to 3 good distilleries, he's gonna make a phenomenal whiskey. And honestly, this is really, really good.
So do we know the entire makeup of this, or some of it's still in
mystery? Yeah, this is interesting. I'm actually surprised that they haven't gone compass box style and revealed it, but my guess is that those contracts might protect that information, right? Like that might be written right into the contract to not reveal that. That's pretty common. So now, do I know a little bit of inside information? I mean, if you guys were guessing like what Islay malt was in here, what would you guess?
So I'd guess between 2. I would feel that it could be Lefroy, but it could also be Kilchoman because they have a very similar like minerally kind of peat.
Yeah, and I would guess Kalila.
Yeah, I would guess Kalila as well.
Oh wow.
The other one that I feel like is possible is, I mean, if you know Billy's history, he worked for Distil before, right? So there might be some connections there. It could be Peated Buna, but I think much more likely is Kalila.
Yeah, and not a big percentage of peated Scotch, I don't think.
No,
right? It just touches
like
the palate.
Peated.
Yeah, it just is not.
Yeah,
like if I was guessing, I would guess that this was like 20% Kalila.
Okay,
that's 10 years old. But I don't know. I'm just totally guessing.
Yeah, I mean when it's in a blend, it's tough to.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, you can have lots of different distilleries taste like each other in Islay. It depends on what it is,
I have 3 Kalilas on my table behind me right now, my counter behind me right now, and none of them are sherry, so it makes it even harder.
Yeah, but like we'd always buy Kalila from the independent market because it was like always done better,
and you're getting it at the way you want it.
Like
you're
how
getting
many
it cash strength, you're getting it at like age stated, you're getting it.
How many good bottles have Gordon Macphail put out of Kalila? Like
ridiculous. So look at the one he's about to show.
This one. I know I kind of had a feeling this might come up. Do you guys see this one?
No.
So I have, and I want to buy it, but it's like, I mean,
what's the
everything's
on there? 23, is it?
It's a great price.
Well, it's a 23 Kalila from First Fill Sherry. And so we split the cask with the US. So I took half the cask for Canada and then half the cask went to the US. And but what's crazy though is at age 23, from a First Fill Sherry butt, it is 59.9% ABV.
Oh, wow.
Whoa. And that's, it's pretty wild. But to be honest, it doesn't need water. I don't think this needs water either. What do you guys think?
Not at all.
But we hardly put water in our whiskey, really.
No, yeah. Well, like the line is add gasoline to Rob's whiskey, and then it's right for him.
I mean, I think that like if we think a whiskey is not tasting the way that it might, we would maybe add some water to it, or if it's a new bottle we just opened, perhaps.
This is not drinking hot at all.
No,
I don't think so. Anyway, it's, and I told you I've been sensitive to that lately, and this is not hot for me at all. It's well rounded. It's got the exact amount of like mineral, like little, like maybe, I mean, the peat, I don't care if it's more or less, it's a good amount of peat.
Yeah.
Do I get some like
to me this is like prototypical Canadian lovers whiskey. Like, you know, people always say, they're like, give me something that's sherried and peated and cask strength, and it's like, okay, here you go.
And what is the ABV?
I don't know if I love the packaging yet. I know they refreshed it. I'm going to be full disclosure. I love Ben Romek's new packaging, and a lot of people hate me for that, because a lot of the first wave of Ben Romek people that followed it from day one, like, were really upset about the change. I don't think anyone's going to be sad about McNair's changing, but
my only sensitivity to Ben Romek's is that it looks so similar to, for the colorblind guy, it looks too similar to the Ben Riek new labeling.
Oh, okay.
For me.
Okay, it's funny you say that, because that's been my theory, is that, because what percentage of men are colorblind? Like 17? It's pretty high, right?
Big. It's one out 4, so it's higher. It's 25%.
Oh, it's higher than that. Okay, so in other words, yeah, there's lots of people looking at the new Ben Romek packaging and thinking like, yeah, it looks like vodka, right?
Honestly, I don't have a beef with the actual packaging itself. I just felt like it was just so similar to Ben Riek, and the fact that they both start with Ben, it's just like, you know, it's
yeah. You have to take a double take.
You do the double take.
Sorry, James, what was the ABV on this blend here?
It's 55.4.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the finish, it really shines on the finish. You get lots of complexity coming out of this thing.
Yeah. Well, I gotta be honest, for me personally, I like this more than Glenallachie 10 cask strength, personally.
I like this more than the batch 6. I will say that for sure. I do like it more than
I was gonna say, I think long term you'll be able to like slot different ones at different spots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it's controversial, but to me, this is a more complete whiskey.
Yeah,
like, we're going to sell a lot more Glenallachie 10 cask strength. That's just the way it is. But
there's a higher percentage of people that like non-peated whiskey. I think that's always going to be the issue. And
now if you go to Edmonton, my friend, it reverses in a hurry.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean,
cold weather, peat.
Yeah. The whiskey geek in general, I would say that's when it starts to change. But if you are talking about the regular whiskey consumer, it's probably
it's not even close.
Yeah, it's not close. But like when you talk about whiskey geeks, I'm thinking like it's 60-40 peat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think both of these whiskeys are like very firmly targeted at more of a whiskey geek, more of an enthusiast.
Right. Absolutely.
Like I find it hard to believe that someone would accidentally buy McNair's Limerick 10 cask strength.
I find it hard to believe that, like we talk about secondary market all the time on this channel, and for whatever reason, like maybe your odd compass box has secondary value, but blends don't really carry a big secondary value. And I find that weird, because when you're talking about a blend, you're talking about someone sat down and pieced together whiskeys that they liked together, right? Whereas in a single malt, they don't always get that opportunity. Yeah, you're choosing 10 casks or 20 casks, but you have to choose, well, you don't have to, but for the most part, they have to choose the same age, right? So
yeah, you're right. Like until Compass Box came along and started telling people, you know, here's some crazy old casks we're putting together. Before that, there probably wasn't that big of a secondary market for blended malts. Like maybe just like old dusties that are from, you know, a long time ago that would get money on an auction. But other than that, there's no like.
There still isn't.
Yeah, that was whiskey that people would drink.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I think Limerick is that way too. Like this does not scream like collect me. This screams like open the bottle and just crush it.
Yeah, and That being said, this is super crushable.
I just crushed it.
Yeah,
It's very crushable.
I've been drinking fast on the show recently.
I was watching the Waterford
I
episode.
downed all the 4
I was
Waterfords
like,
so quick.
every time I look back, a glass is gone. I'm like, are we gonna mark these or what's happening?
Well, I gotta give you a hard time for the Van Doe. Please tell me someone commented on Van Doe.
Yeah, a few people did.
Anyone say like Vincent Van Doe? No.
I didn't know any of the abbreviations of what, like, it's just letters. I'm like, what is happening right now? I'm trying to read this. I'm a school teacher.
Yeah, Rob's
I
like,
don't
edit out
apologize.
everything I said. I'm like, well, we can't. It's like the whole show then.
You guys gotta go and try it. It's called Van Doe. It's basically a fortified wine from the south of France. But
And we
it's
kind of
interesting you guys picked up on like some of the fruity grapey notes that it has, and that's a character of Van Doe.
Yeah.
It tends to be really grapey, and I think, to be honest, like one of the things that Waterford doesn't get enough credit for, like they're clearly distilling incredible liquid. There's no doubt about that, and they are translating the terroir into the final bottle. But the wood management, I think they're adding more wood than you realize, but they're doing it in a way that like amplifies the flavors that are already there. And I think it's very, very masterful. Because when you think about like the American oak, the virgin oak, and the Van Doe, like they're kind of building on flavors that are already there in the spirit. I think, yeah, some people might hate me for saying that and that it's a slag on the spirit, but I think it's like equally as skillful cask management as it is skillful distilling. I really believe that. I don't represent them, but
Yeah.
that was the thing that struck me. And maybe it's because I used to work for Bergladi too.
It's crazy because everything they do screams like this was expensive. Like we did this, but it was expensive, and we spared no cost. And then we did this, and it was expensive, and we spared no cost. And like you could just tell, they're putting the money. And like people are complaining about cost, but at the end of the day, they're putting big money into this company.
Yeah, they're seeing spirit for 3-year-old whiskey. Like, why am I paying $100 a bottle for this? It makes no sense.
It's because.
But when I saw that the Van Doe casks were in there, you know what I honestly thought was not that they happened to have a bunch of Van Doe casks around and they like had a good deal and they're like, let's fill them. I think that this was a thoughtful, purposeful, like, this is exactly what we need to highlight this, especially at a young age. Like, add some of these grapey elements to the final flavor. Like, and again, that's like incredible forethought, because usually whiskey's not made that way. It's like, okay, this is what we got in the warehouse, guys. Right?
So what you're saying is my grappa tasting notes.
Grappa.
Say that again.
Grappa.
James is cringing and he's not even Italian.
Bro, I chunked grappa before, but I'm wondering if you could tell me where I could find some grappa.
Hey, we sell grappa from Massey. I'm down.
Yeah, grappa. I love grappa, but
I'm just not going to pronounce it like Alex Trebek, like you do.
It's for me, it was like distinctly there, like and you have to taste a really good one in order to understand what I'm saying. Like,
Sure.
And you have tried some of the ones that I've tried.
Yeah.
But yeah. We're gonna improve
Pour me a good grappa.
this summer.
I'm
This
excited.
summer, you know what? Grappa might handle a cigar really well.
Oh,
It does.
yeah.
I think there's a lot. The thing is that most grappa is very skillfully distilled. It's just there's not enough that's available at like higher strengths, and a lot of it is consumed, unaged. So there's not that same culture of drinking mature grappa. So you kind of almost have to go all in to really appreciate it, I think. But
I feel
go ahead.
It's the problem with Italian. As an Italian, I feel like I'm allowed to say this. It's the problem with Italians in general, that like they can do something really well, but they're like, you know what? It's okay. It's good. Let's just chill for a little bit. Let's not age our grappa for like 10 years. Let's just drink it now.
Yeah.
The Puni distillery is a prime example of this. They have like a gold mine that they've created, and they're like, you know what? We're not going to distill whiskey for a year. Like, what's happening over there? Like, you have this huge, like, ridiculously expensive warehouse, and nothing comes out of Puni. Like, what the hell is going on over there? I don't know.
We represented Puni. It just was too hard to sell.
Yeah, because they don't do enough. Like they're not pumping out enough. They're not marketing their brand enough. They're not. I feel. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
They need a shot of capitalism in their thing, or what?
I just don't
At
think.
the end of the day, like if the bottles don't sell off the shelf, you kind of end up in a dark corner a little bit, and then where do you go? And that's the Puni story, unfortunately.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean,
But yeah, I would argue their Puni's spirit is as good quality as Waterford. I would happily argue that point.
I think they had all the makings of something great, and then it seemed like they just died.
Well, I think that keep in mind, like they're very tiny, and they're really like the only kind of major malt distillery, right, in Italy.
Yeah.
So they can be the homeboys. They're like the shelter point of Italy, right?
Yeah.
So they'll have their market. They'll do fine. And eventually, it will get a bit more accessible, inevitably. So
That'd be nice.
James, true or false? Macallan is so self-absorbed that they couldn't take that Gordon Macphail bottled an 80-year-old oldest Scotch ever. So they came out with an 81-year-old, probably 4 years before they were planned on actually releasing that bottle. What's the insider on that? Are they just pissed off at Gordon Macphail and have to have the oldest Scotch ever?
yeah, well, I gotta be honest, like when I first heard the news, I was kind of like really disappointed, and it was like, oh gosh, really, guys? But as time goes on, it doesn't feel like that big of a deal. I mean, we know Gordon Macphail has other whiskey that's older than that, right?
Yeah.
We know that. So I guess it's just a matter of time. Like to be honest, I don't think Gordon Macphail was phased whatsoever. So did you guys read the Whiskey Sponge article that came out that day?
So, I mean, I feel like I know where Macallan, because door story is that they sourced their own whiskey from somebody.
They bought it back from someone else?
So wink,
So of course they did.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Of course they
we don't know. We don't know where that came from. But there's
look, I'm not gonna on YouTube reveal exactly what it is, but I will read. Maybe I should read the Whiskey Sponge article because it's okay. I'm gonna read the opening line. So the title of the article was Macallan released more of Gordon Macphail's whiskey. It's from February 10th, 2022. The first line of the article is empty tourist processing facility Macallan Distillery has announced the exciting launch of yet another of the casks they quite evidently purchased from Gordon and Macphail shortly before Gordon and Macphail builds a second distillery. I love that. I mean, look, I hate that like we have to dance around that stuff. It's silly. It's silly. Like Macallan could have come out and just said exactly how it went, exactly their decision process. Yeah. But instead, they don't reveal any of that, which to be fair, that could be part of the deal. Like, I have no idea. That's not my job to know that information. But like, I think people would have been okay knowing that.
Yeah, I think it's that old school Scottish, like gentleman's contract. They shake hands. We won't say anything. You guys don't say anything. We're happy with the deal. Go about your merry way kind of thing. I think that's what it was. I mean, we don't know for sure that that's what's happened with this particular Scotch.
No, I'm not going to say like I can guarantee that that's 100% what happened, but I mean, it's true of lots of like old whiskeys that have come out like in the last decade, right? We assume where some of them have come from, whether it's, I'm sure, like old Glengrants, Glenlivets. I mean, who has all that stock? Like only one company really had that kind of foresight. So,
which begs the next question: what does Gordon Macphail have in that warehouse, right? And when can we go there? That's what I want to know. I just want to go there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The distillery manager at Ben Romick, he made some comparison to it. He said it was like going through the looking glass, like of whiskey, like just because it's not it doesn't seem real what they have.
Yeah. It would be the equivalent of a museum, right? Because like, yes, every distillery is that to a certain extent, but Gordon Macphail has a catalog of distilleries that they've dealt with for years.
Well, okay, so here's an example, Rob. I asked them point blank, I'm like, who do you think has more Brora and Port Ellen stock, you guys or Diageo? And like, they kind of, the two people that were on the call kind of looked at each other. Like, I could tell they were like thinking about it. Like, maybe it's us.
If it's pretty close, that's a lot.
That's
right?
scary.
Yeah.
And look, it might not be. I mean, who knows? I don't have that information, but I think the bigger point is that, they're just in a very unique scenario. And more importantly, like they're doing a good job of curating it. You know, they're not just like liquidating, like, you know, I genuinely get the impression like their thought process is, you know, they're cashing in on this boom too, like everybody is. Right. But they're literally turning around and spending that money on like building a distillery that they believe is like going to make 80-year-old whiskey itself.
Wow. And
like reinvesting in their cask program. And they're pretty transparent about it.
Well, before we move on, I feel like we have a couple more things.
Let's pour another whiskey.
Let's
Let's try this. This is great stuff.
This is really good.
Yeah.
This is
Compass
really good.
box.
And $65. Am I right about that price?
Yeah.
This is the Compass box.
Orchard House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do we know what's in this?
Yeah, we do. So it's Compass Box actually started doing. There's a bit of a Gordon Macphail connection here. Okay. I mean, you guys probably know like some of the Compass Box has definitely purchased product from Gordon Macphail in the past. I think the rumor is like some of the stuff like the Circus in general, some of those old blends were maybe could have come from them.
Which are some of the best right there.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, and the new Velicor as well obviously has some of those parcels in it.
That one I haven't tried.
No, it's not in Canada yet. It'll be in maybe 2 or 3 weeks. It'll be available. So, so Compass Box started filling things themselves. So they actually are now going and filling their own casks straight from the pipe, essentially. So in this one, there's 3 kind of core. I mean, one of them you'll guess right away. It's Klein Leash.
Yeah.
And then there's some Linkwood, and I believe Ben Rinus.
Okay.
You can see what they're doing here. They're focusing specifically on fruitier profiles.
Like a little bit of floral, lots of fruit.
Yeah.
That's what I get here.
Yeah, it struck me that like this specifically isn't citrus fruit or tropical fruit. It's like right down the middle in that orchard fruit.
Yeah. Pear.
So it's pear and peach.
Once again, like Compass Box like has these wacky labels, and you taste the whiskey, and it's surprising how, you know, the themes kind of converge.
You really get that like waxy, that beeswax, Klein Leash kind of characteristic, that like wax crayon.
The whiskey's about 8 years old. You guys have seen those infographics probably on their website. Yeah, the tree rings. So
this is 8, like the youngest stuff that's in this is 8?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Which to be honest tastes kind of like the right age for this.
But it's, again, I go back to price, because the closest 8-year-old on the market is what price wise is the
Lagavulin and Ardbeg are over 100.
Yeah, we're over here it's like 90. Or did they increase the price? I don't know, but
yeah, including tax. I mean, I think and Glenallachie 8 will be around that same point that the Lagavulin's at.
Okay.
Like, I think it'll be probably like 90 plus tax type deal.
Yeah, I mean, for the Glenallachie 8, I feel like the better buy is to just like jump to the 12. I don't know. I haven't tasted it yet. I shouldn't say that before I taste it. But something like this at $65.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, this is a perfect summer pour right here.
Yeah.
I think what's really important about this whiskey, and you know, I don't know if this was like, I think Compass Box's vision has changed a little bit, right? It's not quite like John in a battle with the SWA anymore, right? Like it feels like a little bit more purposeful, and a lot of the stuff Compass Box has released, like have they ever released anything that you guys thought was a mainstream targeted whiskey ever?
No,
I can't say
no. The closest thing for sure is Peat Monster, but again, peat is a niche.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe you're appealing to the Ardbeg fan with like no name.
Right.
Yeah, that would be, you're right. Like we kind of skirt the surface of some of those types of buyers. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like we do sell the most of Peat Monster of the range, and it's because we're selling it to people that are buying it accidentally sometimes, right? People that like the label, people that know what peat is, maybe they know they're buying a gift and they know someone they're buying for it likes peated whiskey, or they recognize that there's good value there. They don't, they see that it says Lafroig on the back label, whatever. But I think this Orchard House is going to like bridge the gap to some whiskey drinkers that would never have otherwise drunk like a premium blended malt like this.
Yeah.
Like it's going to open some doors. And this is, I think, like the theme of our time in whiskey is like Two Birds is a good example. Like everything, like the lines are all getting fuzzy.
Yeah.
And this whiskey to me, like completely stretched Compass Box into a new kind of era that they don't normally occupy.
Yeah. Like
it's still Compass Box. It's still clearly a Compass Box whiskey.
Is this like a big production? Like, did they make a lot of this?
What I think it's really key to keep in mind the production at Compass Box and what qualifies as big production. I mean, like the special releases are like, a lot of them are like 3,000 bottles.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
That's like a sneeze even for some of the other smaller distilleries.
Yeah.
So this we're going to see as kind of like a core range release for them. Like,
yeah, it kind of more or less replaced the Oak Cross.
Okay.
So truthfully, I wouldn't be surprised if long term this is like the main thing that they sell.
I was gonna say, like, on a premium bar at a hall, like I think Vaughan is like the hall mecca of Canada. Like there's wedding halls every corner, like it's ridiculous. And your premium bar has like your Glenfiddich 12, your
Johnny Walker
Black. Your Johnny Walker Black,
yeah.
Your the 10-year-old Glenmorangie. Like that kind of stuff. Yeah. I could totally see this being on that.
Like if you 16.
Yeah, I could totally see this being on that bar. And like if like a whiskey person walked up to that bar and they're like, holy smokes,
right.
That's all they're drinking all night. You know what I mean? Like that's what they're drinking all night.
I didn't notice a batch number on the back of this, so I guess we'll see in and see. I
mean, let's be honest. Like I'm sure there's always experimentation going on behind the scenes at Compass Box, and there's probably lots of stuff that doesn't see the light of day. And if you followed the batches on Story of the Spaniard, like it changes a lot.
Yeah,
but they taste similar, but in terms of how they get there is very different. So
really cool.
It's cool because I mean, we've talked about the brands that you represent tonight, and nobody got out of character here. Nobody was like being, dare I say, dishonest or trying to sell something. We all truly enjoy the whiskeys that we've tried. I know that about you, James, because, and like, that's what I really want these guys to understand is we've talked many times off camera, off the record, whatever. And we're talking about the same things. Like we're liking the same kind of whiskeys. And like, yeah, we mentioned Springbank earlier and how much we love that kind of whiskey, but like, we're not embellishing. And that's what I feel like is you're at an advantage almost because this is your job, but you also enjoy these whiskeys that you represent. And that unfortunately is not the trade norm.
Well, I have a genuine belief that the day of that layer of icing on everything in terms of marketing, like it's just, look, it'll always be there because we as human beings are susceptible to it, right? Whether we acknowledge it or not. But like the way forward clearly is less of that. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I always feel like for me as a salesman that my best sales technique is for my sales pitch to be genuine.
Right.
And then like it's just easier. Absolutely. So if you just like don't have to worry about this like glossy veneer over everything, sometimes you can get right to the point.
Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of whiskeys that have that glossy veneer of marketing on them, they would be just as successful without it. They don't need it.
It's true.
Yeah.
I feel like with what we're dealing with, when you have that genuine like desire to drink your own stuff, it makes a huge difference because you can tell, like I knew people in the trade that they'll never admit it. They wouldn't even admit it to like me off the record, but you can tell their bar is not lined with that 43% whiskey that they're pumping.
Yeah.
It's not. You
Right.
know what I mean? It's lined with the stuff that they really enjoy drinking. You know what I mean?
So, I mean, we're not going to have someone on here that's going to pour us, the Glenfiddich core range. Like we're not interested. Our viewers aren't interested.
No,
they've
not
been,
on the Whiskey Rant.
It's tough to come up with material. Like there probably is an angle where that works, but it wouldn't be their traditional angle, right? So I'm always thinking too of like, and again, this would be another pet peeve of mine of the industry is sometimes the thought process is let's create this and try to create a path to market and convince people they want this. I personally am much more interested in what's something people already want. And then maybe there's that product exists and we just need to connect them with it. And like, to me, that's what these types of products are, right? Because like, truthfully, both of these products are going to be a little bit of work for me to sell. They just are. Like people are going to not see this on the shelf and be like, oh my gosh, and like move past the bottle of Blanton's and grab Lumbery. It's just, that's not how it works.
Depends how much Blanton's is though.
I love whenever we can bash Blanton's on this channel, like that made the rant right there. That's the opening line.
I hate Blanton's so much. I just hate it.
I saw it today, actually. It was a retailer who's scanning their shelves, and then they zero in on the Blanton's like basic bitch bottle, which is like 40%, and then they like hone in on the horse. I'm like, rock bottom.
And what was the
right
price?
there?
What was the price on that?
I don't know. I didn't look, but it was
because I was at the duty free and they wanted $180 US at a duty free. 180 for Blanton's original. Even the LCBO is up to $75 now.
These guys they're so tired of hearing do you have Blanton's that like they would willingly price it at $1,000. I had that question again.
So this brings up a few questions for me. So first of all, I always think the key thing to think about with a Blanton's fanboy is that guy might, like, this is what I think of as an importer and someone who does education, is that person, my job is not to like make fun of them for blends. My job is to like bring them into Michter's, right? That's my job.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes like when hype builds around something like blends and people go out and buy it that maybe wouldn't have bought bourbon, like I think the net is good and we're bringing people in, and that is important. And look, the truth is like we all, if we could talk to our past selves, like we would make fun of things we drank, right? We just would.
That's true. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I always, I can't remember where I saw this, but someone had a theoretical, like, if you could go back, let's say 10 or 15 years and like tell your whiskey drinking self, like, I don't know, would you say like go and buy all the Pappy Van Winkle? Or, but the truth is, and you guys probably realize this, like your 10 or 15-year-old self would laugh in your face if you told them that.
Yeah.
And it's true now. Like there are things on the shelf now that 10 years from now, you'll look at and think, oh, I should have like, you were talking about the value of blends on the secondary. Like I should have gone and bought all those old Compass boxes that were like going for $500 that are now collectible, or some of these rare bourbons that seem expensive already, but still shoot to the moon later. Like we don't know. But the point is like your perspective shifts on what's valuable.
Yeah. And
I think like you have to like try to stay in the present with that stuff and assign the value just based off your own experience.
Yeah, I mean,
it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that.
It's definitely hard to do that. I mean, I've always tried to buy within my means to an extent, maybe a little bit more than what I should be buying. But even at that time, like 8 years ago, to me, $100 whiskey was a lot of money. I used to think that was, you know what I mean? Like that was like, oh wow, I'm splurging. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if I would have pulled the trigger on some of those $100 whiskeys back then, I would have, Springbank, everything.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I remember looking at a bottle of Highland Park 25 out of Alberta, and it was $399 Canadian. And I was like, okay, this is going to be, my cornerstone bottle, the one that I just like go to on very special occasions. And like, because I've never spent more than like 150 on a bottle before that. Like, this is going to be my showcase piece. And then it's soon like, that was nothing at that shortly after that.
Here's the thing though, Jeremy. This is what this makes me think of. So you could get like an independent bottled 25-year-old Highland Park for pretty close to that price still. And that's not to say that the independent bottler is better or that we need to like move towards independent bottlers. To me, that's not the relevant fact. What happens is our brains tend to focus on like what we think we should want, or what like we formulate this vision, and I think it's tough for us to deviate from it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not honest with ourselves. I think like I noticed first when I was working in the wine shop long ago that people were really guilty of this. So they would see, like they would hear about like, let's say Bordeaux, right? Like that's the big wine that's really expensive and collectible, and they'd go out and buy it, but like they're not going home. So they'd have these amazing cellars filled with these wines. But like if you go to Bordeaux and you have those great wines, like you're having it with like the local food, the lamb, the context is everything. Where, if you're not duplicating that whole experience, like it reduces the value. In essence, these people, it's easy to not be honest about how you actually value something and if you really enjoy it.
Yeah, I can see that. So you're saying a lot of people
And then a lot of people that buy Springbank or Blanton's or just anything, even my brands, they don't necessarily buy it because it's what they want to drink.
That's right.
But sometimes they don't even realize that.
Yeah, it's the act as if
that they just need to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because someone will come over like, oh, you've got Blanton's.
Yeah, it's a show.
I got the B, I got the L, I got the A.
Yeah. I mean, I personally know people that have collected Blanton's just for all the horses.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You gotta collect them all.
You gotta collect them all. And I mean, maybe they will hold their value, but maybe the whiskey world will realize how shit that whiskey is and they won't. I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Well, do you guys know who Gary Vee is?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. He's like a social media kind of guru guy out there. Seems like he doesn't sleep and just is on the internet all the time. Yeah. But he actually does have some good insight. He's big into card collecting. And he used an analogy once because he has ties to the wine business. That's how he got started. And I'll just use the analogy with hockey cards because I think it'll make more sense for this audience. So if you guys remember like the big hockey card boom that happened, and like we were talking about that Beanie Baby article that was in Whiskey Advocate, I think like it ties into this too. So at that time, people looked at the very top collectibles. So in this case, like let's say like a Wayne Gretzky rookie card. And they said, wow, that went from being like a $20 card to a $350 card. And so they started thinking, how can I get those other, like they just bought a whole bunch of cards thinking one of them one day is going to be worth $350. But the mistake that they made, they should have just bought every Wayne Gretzky rookie card they could afford.
Yeah.
And they would have made an enormous amount of money, right? Like we tend not to think that way though. And whiskey's the same way.
It's true.
Right? Like there are certain things that will always be rare, like old whiskeys, aren't easily replaceable. And I think that's going to be a big narrative going forward. Yeah. The whiskey business has emptied out their cellars the last 15 years because it's been cash in time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's a scary thought. A scary thought.
Yeah, no, I do think it's a scary thought for sure.
So I've kind of had that motto with the things that I do choose to collect. There's a specific type of, brand or whatever that I will buy multiple of. And yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because it's right. It's true. Like, yeah, okay. That $350 bottle, is a lot of money if you're buying 5 of them, if you're buying 6 of them, but if you're going to buy 2 of everything and 70 to 98% of that doesn't become worth anything, then you were smarter to save half that money and then just buy up the more expensive bottle. Yeah,
that's essentially what I'm saying is that like if you're really in this for collecting, like buying the collection of blends makes no sense. Like what you should go and do is buy at auction some like Hirsch 1974.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But like people have a tough time wrapping their head around that concept.
Yeah, I think what's attractive to some people too, and it's not the hedge fund investors, it's not the guys with big bank, the whales, so to speak. It's the guys like us that, you know, whenever you strike gold, it's such a cool feeling. You know what I mean? So you buy your 10 bottles, and if you hit on one of them, it's a cool feeling, right? So like there's the other side to that coin where like, yeah, I could go out and buy this already proven Macallan Edition 1, or I could try to find the next Macallan Edition 1. And yeah, it goes with the
people
Gary
have
V.
done that harmony. My goodness.
Well, there you go, right? But like, and Gary V's right in saying, well, you're an idiot. You should actually just buy up all the Macallan Edition 1, and you'll have, right. And he's right, but it takes away from the fun of the game, kind of thing, right? Like it's guys like us that can't really do that, and
yeah, I know what you mean. Like part of the joy of collecting Beanie Babies is like buying a new Beanie Baby every week.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
As much as you're like have it in your head that it might be valuable, that's not really motivating you to like press buy every week on Amazon.
It's the thrill of the hunt, and it's all of that, right? So
the problem is that we thought everyone was crazy paying the prices they were paying 5-6 years ago. Like Pappy 15 was $900, and we're like, that is insane that people are paying that. Yeah. And now it's $2,500, and we're just like, what happened?
It was always insane, and now it's just.
I guess one saving.
I shouldn't say that word. Edit that part out. Okay. Bleep me out when I say that if you have an opportunity.
One saving grace about Blanton's is there is a barreling date or a bottling date or whatever. So maybe that does save it when you have an old dusty Blanton's from 2021. Yeah. You know, in 15 years from now, that people might think it's good, but that whiskey has gone down in quality since even 5-6 years ago.
For sure it has. For sure it has.
Yeah.
Are we marking this bad boy, or
the compass box?
We're gonna do this in front of James.
Yeah, if you guys promise that you'll just be like straight up, like, look, I'll be blunt. Like I've always been vocal. I don't think, like, do I think every compass box release is equally great? No, but other people I know like the ones I don't like more than I do. Yeah. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's funny because last episode we mentioned that a $50 bottle at 85 is like buy 10 or whatever. Whereas, you know, like a $300 bottle at 88 is like, okay, buy another one, but just be careful.
Yeah.
So that, with all that being thought out, what would you score this bad boy?
So this compass box is like, it's delicious. It's nice, refreshing, clean, easy drinking. I absolutely love it. I think the only caveat maybe like where it wouldn't score a super, super high mark for me is like, it's not a profile. It's a profile I've had before.
Right.
Like I've had this Kleinleach profile, which is great. And I love it. I love Kleinleach. But the price
point. Yeah.
Right. Because I'm going to be adding lots of value points for this. I think it's a solid 87, and I would give it a 1.5 for value, 88.5 out of 100.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to give this one an 88 as well. Actually, honestly, I really, really enjoy it. I think this is like the buy a case, like if you can, kind of whiskey, because not because you're going to collect it and it's going to be worth $400. I don't think it ever will. Like if Compass Box continues to make this forever, then it won't be.
Yeah.
But it's one of those whiskeys that like you always want to have open on your bar because it's a great pour and play.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's what I can see. Like you have those gatherings in the summer where, you know, like bottles are just going to get opened and like I would always want to have this handy for that moment.
This is you take this to the cottage and you don't mind if it gets crushed. Yeah, and it will get crushed. It's fine.
It will get crushed.
This is the pro. Like I live on a street. Jeremy's experienced it where like all the guys on my street like to drink, and we all like we get together at night, we barbecue, we whatever, and we'll have cigars or whatever, and we'll like whatever I bring out is gone. Like I don't expect it to come home that night.
Yeah.
And this is the bottle that like I would bring out, you know, once a week, and I have no qualms about it getting crushed that night because it's great. Everybody's going to enjoy it. And, you know, it wasn't expensive.
Yeah.
Another thing I think it's useful for is, you know, I've got lots of buddies right now that are, you know, kind of dabbling a little bit more seriously in cocktail creation. And that can get tricky. You know, a lot of the whiskeys that they're buying, like, don't work with that. Yeah. But this would be like, if you're that kind of person that, you know, likes to play and you realize your cocktails aren't all great, but you're just having fun. like this is a good bottle to have handy for that.
Yeah, the ABV is great for like that punchback that you want in a cocktail as well, right?
Yeah.
So
I think this would make a great old fashioned.
yeah, absolutely.
I think it'd make a really good old fashioned.
Yeah, you just play maybe with like different bitters or something.
Yeah, get a weird different bitter in there. I think it'd be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of those Fee Brothers bitters that's really fruity.
Yeah.
To me would like be really cool in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good whiskey. The other two are great as well. We shouldn't like. We're not going to mark them because I don't like marking. Or you can do it if you want, but I don't like marking based on a sample. But I would definitely buy absolutely 2 of each of those bottles.
Yeah, those were great as well.
So that's going to happen as well. Yeah,
This
was a lot of fun. I think we went like way over time. Like
I don't think so. We're probably okay.
I mean,
yeah, it's just I think we're just over an hour, so it's
yeah,
well spent.
that was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, James, thank you so much for coming on. Very much appreciated.
Check out each of our Patreons, whether you're a Patreon of Jeremy's or a Patreon of mine. You can get this podcast a couple days sooner, or at least a day sooner. There's other fun things that are going on our Patreon as well, so you can check that out.
Yeah.
We're gonna have like James is a staple on like.
Yeah,
For
whenever
me,
we
it's
need
like-
some insider information into what's going on.
Eventually, you guys will get tired of hearing about my brands, though. It will happen.
I don't think so.
I don't
You
think
represent
so.
enough of them that we're gonna be okay.
Well, Gordon Macphail will keep releasing stuff that's completely different from what they had before. So
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The goal is to have Richard on the channel with James,
Right.
and that would just be like the epic podcast.
Yeah.
Like Richard is a great dude, and
Yeah,
and
Richard's
what they're
awesome.
doing over there at Gordon Macphail and at Benromic is really, really cool.
Yeah,
So,
a little insight to what's coming up next out of that company would be really cool to
Yeah.
hear about, for sure.
and then
the Cairn opens. I encourage everyone, if you haven't, go and look up the Cairn on Instagram, Facebook. It's a very cool project.
We'll throw out the link.
yeah,
Put the link in here.
okay, stay on the line, and we will shut this down over here. Thanks, guys, for watching. Cheers.
Have a good one, guys. Cheers.
It's a cool name, Rostislav.
It's very bold.
Yes,
I wouldn't mess with them.
it's like a mix of Jamaican and Russian.
So we're cutting that out. We're cutting that out. We're cutting this out. We're cutting that out.
Is that bad? Rasta?
My God.
Come on, that was Is that racially engineered?
I don't know. I just think we should get a not.
Just not chance it. Oh yeah.